What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Game Week 35 Wildcard Draft. My name is Ryan from the Football Chatbox, and in this video, we'll talk at all the players that you can look to shortlist on your wildcard and get them in your wildcard. And if you're not wildcarding this week, this could also help you in terms of I'll explain which players are probably a priority to get in for this week. Having said all of that, let's get straight into the video. All right, now in goalkeepers, let's start with goalkeepers. Now, goalkeepers, for those of you who are not wildcarding this week, it's probably not a priority. But for those of you who are wildcarding this week, there are about, I think, maybe 5 goalkeepers that you could look at in terms of this week's wildcard. And I'll start with the first one. I think Petrovic is someone that everyone will want to try and get in just because of the fact that he doubles in 35. And also doubles in 37. He's the first out of the 5. The next goalkeeper I would look at would be, I would actually add Edison as an option, as another goalkeeper option that everyone will look at, obviously doubling in 37. One thing to keep in mind is I think Edison is a completely league state dependent goalkeeper. If for some reason Arsenal slip up in any of the games before 37, and if City have won the league by then or look comfortable to win the league, I feel like Ortega could get at least one game. So that is something you kind of have to keep in mind of. That's the slight problem with Edison. The next goalkeeper would be Vicario. He's got a double in 35. Not the easiest, to be honest, in Arsenal and Chelsea. But then in 37, he's got Burnley and City, which is not too bad. And 38, he's got Sheffield United. Not a bad keeper option to have. And then your other goalkeeper option would be Onana, who has a double in 37. Got Burnley this week. Palace in 36. Not the best of... I don't think they'll keep a single clean sheet, to be honest. If anything, they probably keep a clean sheet against Brighton, but every other team, I think they concede. So you're fully expecting save points. And then the final goalkeeper, I would add... David Raya over Dubravka. I know Dubravka has a double game week, but I'm going to add David Raya just because Arsenal's defense is elite. They got Spurs this week, which might not be the best option. So maybe you have Raya and pick Petrovic or something like that, and you start Petrovic or you start Vicario, whichever. But he's got a fixture against Bournemouth in game week 36, which is pretty good, and a fixture in game week 38 against Everton, which is pretty good. And I think game week 37 against Man United isn't the worst fixture also to have. There is a possibility they keep a clean sheet against United. They could also lose their clean sheet, but there is a possibility that they do keep a clean sheet in that game. So he is also probably another keeper to consider, just because Arsenal's defense and in general is pretty elite, and we've just seen them keep 2 clean sheets in the double game week as well. So he is a goalkeeper to kind of consider. Having said that, let's move in to defenders. Now, as you can see, I've got defenders and midfielders up here, but let's start with the defenders first. And we'll go with the Arsenal defenders. Now, I think Gabriel or Saliba, whoever you have, even Ben White, I think one of those defenders you probably want on a wildcard. Yes, they don't have a single double game week player, but just like I mentioned with Raya, they don't have single double game week fixture, but just like I mentioned with Raya, their defense is elite. And if you look, we'll talk about the other defenders. There aren't that many options available for you to be able to fill 5 slots and be comfortably happy with filling 5 double game weeks from teams. Do not get too focused and don't focus fully on just the double game weeks. There are 36 and 38 as well, which you need to consider as part of your wildcard building. Think of each game week between now till the end of the season as 25% of the season left. That's a huge number. So you need to consider 36 and 38, and Arsenal have Bournemouth and Everton in those fixtures. 2 of the best fixtures, and they're both at home as well. I should add as well. So good option for Gabriel, to be honest. I think he's a good defensive option to have. Can score a goal potentially from a set piece against United as well. So I don't mind having Gabriel on my wild card. if you owned Ben White for a long time and you have proper team value stored on him. Now I have team value stored on Gabriel, so I can keep him. If you had Ben White, I don't mind Ben White as well. If you wanted to double up on defense, that's not a problem. Or maybe you just keep Ben White and you sell the other one. So it's up to you, but I think an Arsenal defender, at least one, is probably a must. Up to you in terms of who you want to between Gabriel, Saliba, and Ben White. I would say Saliba has the higher chance of collecting bonus points, assuming no attacking returns between all three defenders. Saliba is one who accumulates the bonus points. Gabriel is a cheaper one. Ben White and Saliba of similar price. If Ben White gets attacking returns, he is obviously the high ceiling pick. So it'll be like Gabriel, Saliba, and then Ben White on top. But that also comes in terms of like price. They're very high, and then Gabriel is significantly like cheaper. So kind of want to keep in terms of price in mind as well. Next defender I would go would be Fabian Schär. Now Fabian Schär, I think Newcastle's fixtures are good. They got double in 37, and the rest of the fixtures are also good. They didn't keep a clean sheet in the last game, but the defense has slightly improved, and they've kept a couple of clean sheets before that. Fabian Schär is very well capable of like a bullet header or outside the box shot as well from scoring a goal. He has goal threat. I would probably look and consider him as an option. Unfortunately, Trippier is injured, so that's not someone that we want to consider at the moment. Fabian Schär has high upside. But if you can't afford a Fabian Schär, another Newcastle defender that I would look at would be Dan Burn as well as another option. Good fixtures, like I said, with Fabian Schär. Less goal threat, but cheaper option compared to Fabian Schär. So if you're tight on a budget, I would go for Dan Burn. My next one is, unfortunately, it'll be one of the double Gameweek players in 35 who are currently both flagged. Now, Gusto is there and has a fixture, not the best of fixtures. I don't think both Spurs and Chelsea, to be fair, have the best of fixtures for 35. Gusto has Aston Villa and Spurs. But his 37 fixtures against Forest and Brighton are actually good fixtures. So he has good fixtures that are outside of 35. Meanwhile, Pedro Porro, again, not the best of fixtures and also not a great fixture in 36 as well. But as Burnley and Sheffield United, that's the only two saving graces. But both of them are currently flagged. I would probably slightly lean more towards Gusto than I would lean towards Pedro Porro. But then that leaves you the question of, do you want to double up on Chelsea defense, or do you want to go Vicario in goal and Gusto in defense? That is left to you in terms of how you want to decide. So do you want to double up on Chelsea defense, or get a Vicario in goal and get Gusto, or go Pedro Porro and Petrovic? That's left to you. The next two defensive slots I would say would be, I think Diego Dalot I've added in here just because of potential goal threat, potential ability to get assist. He is one option I would consider from United. Now, would I start him any of the weeks? Probably not. I think he's purely a bench boost player. If I look at my defense, I think I would probably only purely play him for the bench boost. I don't see myself starting him in any of the weeks. Just like I said with Donana, I don't think they're keeping a clean sheet in any of the weeks. Maybe 38 if I wanted a differential. But I don't see them keeping a clean sheet. So he's mainly for the 37 bench boost as an option. And if, some of the players that I have here don't turn up or something, then Dalot is not a bad choice to come off the bench as well. My other option is a City defender. Now, this is where the whole Dalot is not a bad option to come on as well comes into play, because City defense is a complete throw the dice and hope for the best kind of situation. I've gone for Guardiola just because of his recent form, but he's also, as you can see from his minutes, not the most minutes guaranteed player. You could potentially go for another Manchester City defender in an Akanji, who interestingly isn't up here, but could go for Akanji as well. Maybe a slightly better option, just not as attacking. Does have the occasional goal threat, but not as attacking as Guardiola, as we have seen. But he's maybe slightly better for minutes potentially. Rico Lewis is cheap, but high minutes risk as well, which is where you go. Maybe Ederson might be a better option, but then, like I said, Ortega has the possibility of playing. So in that case, I guess you go, do you want Guardiola? Maybe do you prefer to go for the second Arsenal defender now and then later decide? come game week 37, if City and Arsenal are still competing for the league, maybe if you know how the players have played so far in terms of minutes, maybe you make one of your transfers as that defensive pick in 37 and you don't go for it now. So it's up to you in terms of how you want to approach that. But I've got Guardiola in there. Other defenders that I would mention is, I think if Pedro Porro is also out or you can't afford him, I don't mind Van de Ven at 4.4. Has the ability potentially to get a goal like we've seen from the Forest game, but not as high. I wouldn't consider him too much of a goal threat. So just purely hoping that luck comes your way, to be honest, in this pick. It's a pure luck, hope for the best kind of move in terms of Van de Ven. Ben Davies is someone else we need to consider from Spurs as well. He's a 4.3 million player. If Udogi, now that Udogi is out, not that is an if, now that Udogi is out, Ben Davies has the potential to play that spot. But there's also a huge possibility of Emerson Royal playing as a left back, potentially. So we don't know exactly. So that is a bit of an uncertain situation, but I will kind of mention those two as well. Romero is also there, but he has a higher chance of getting yellow cards and potentially red cards. So be careful with that one. So those are my defensive picks. I wouldn't really. I think there are a few notable mentions. I would say Maguire as well. If you want a cheap United defender, Maguire is definitely one player to consider. Apart from him, I would also add, I think Region should be mentioned. His form has been good, even though they don't keep clean sheets at times. He tends to get attacking returns. He's been getting a couple of assists in the last couple of games. Tends to get a decent number of bonus as well. So Region is definitely someone who should be mentioned. And Jared Branthwaite as well. Fixtures are good for Everton, as you can see, Brentford, Luton, and Sheffield United in 37. If you're looking to bench boost and you have no wildcard, and if you have Branthwaite, I would keep him against Sheffield United. Good player to have as well. And I guess we could mention Brighton because they have a double, but honestly, I just wouldn't even get a single Brighton player. They're just poor. If you really want some very, very, very cheap defender, Van Heck. But I would rather go for Maguire, to be honest. But yeah, that's my defensive picks. Let's go into midfield. This, as you see on screen, is the template midfield 5. Foden, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, Gordon, and Son. Their fixtures speak for themselves. There's nothing really to explain on top of that. It's basically the template midfield 5 you see on wildcards. What can change on a wildcard? I would go potentially Brennan Johnson. Someone we could consider who could be a 1 week punt. Maybe even someone, if you go, okay, I'm not really sure whether he's going to play 35 in terms of minutes. Maybe you want to look at him and get him for that Burnley fixture. Maybe that's a possibility in 37. But Brennan Johnson. Maddison, I'm not as convinced anymore on Maddison. I wouldn't really mention. I think De Bruyne has a shout to get in there. But I've owned De Bruyne before for the double in 25. And I was absolutely disappointed. He's probably my worst transfer this season. So I personally wouldn't go there for my team. But if you guys want, he is probably the strongest shout to break into this midfield 5. Another player, I mean, there aren't that many. You could say Garnacho for anyone who's looking for a budget option. Garnacho is definitely one. And for those of you who are not on a wildcard, if you've got an Odegaard or a Havertz, I would actually keep them until you get to game week 37. And when you get to game week 37, if you want, then you can sell them. But I think they're good people to hold. Saka, I would sell. Salah, also, I would sell. I'll probably sell all my Liverpool assets, to be honest. I don't think they're really worth keeping. But Saka, I would sell as well. Odegaard and Havertz, I think are worth keeping. And also other players who are worth keeping for those of you who are not on a wildcard is Eze as well. Palace, good fixtures against Fulham and United as well. Good fixtures. I would keep Palace players as well before 37. So that's a few mentions. Mbeumo also, just because of the fixtures, if you have him, good player to keep, we'll say. Now, let's move into the forward line. This is the interesting discussion. Forward line, there are options. I've got Jackson, Isak, and Haaland in here. I'll start and say, for those of you who are not on a wildcard, he is probably the most priority player who doesn't have a double game week. I will go for to say as well as after Son and Palmer, I would put him at a higher priority over the rest of the double game week players. For those of you who aren't on a wildcard, just because Sheffield United is a good fixture at home, and then you got Burnley, Brighton, and United in the double as well, and then Brentford. I would put Isak. I wouldn't worry too much about Callum Wilson coming back. I still think Isak is first choice and will get a good number of minutes. So I would put Isak as my priority transfer in, who is not a double game week player. And if I was to prioritize my transfers, I would have Son and Palmer in the first 2 slots, and then I would have Isak in the third over the other double game week players, to be honest. Now, Haaland is a very interesting one because at the moment, he is not going to be playing in Game Week 34. I'm recording this before City's game against Brighton. Will he actually play the first game, which is like 2 days after? I don't know. I don't think he will. We kind of have to wait and see what Pep says. I don't think Pep is going to give away too much as well. So that's a question mark over there itself, like whether he will or won't play. That is a big question mark there. Then after that, you've got obviously Wolves, Fulham, Spurs, and West Ham. Now, if he plays those, he's good. If he's fit, we don't know what the status of his injury is. We don't even know if it's a season-ending injury. Pep is not going to come out and say that, unfortunately. But then the leakers came out and said that Haaland won't be out for too long. So maybe he's back for 36. So it's up to you guys in terms of whether you want to keep him on the wildcard or sell him. And for those who are not wildcarding as well, there is a question to kind of decide in terms of, do you have Haaland on a wildcard or not? That is something to consider. And then the other one is Jackson. I will tell you now, I don't think I am not one bit confident on Jackson. We've seen him play the last couple of games. He's just another Darwin Núñez. Probably as bad as Darwin Núñez, if not somewhat slightly worse as well than Darwin Núñez, I would say. It's just going to be frustrating to own. He could get something. We've seen him in the previous fixture against Spurs. He got a hat-trick. Probably the most unexpected hat-trick, but he got a hat-trick. So he could get something, but I am just not confident at all, to be honest. Not confident at all. The other striker I would mention that needs to be considered and people aren't looking, I would say, is Watkins. Chasing the golden boot in his supposedly harder fixture run, which we dropped him for. He's got 13 points against Brentford, 7 points against Arsenal, 9 points against Bournemouth. Now, obviously, with City, he didn't play, he was injured. But apart from that, he's had a pretty good run where supposedly everyone, all of us, most of us dropped him for. So I like Watkins as an option going forward as well. I will definitely add. Another striker, for those of you who are not wildcarding, I would like to keep would be Mateta. I think he's like Eze. 35 and 36, they have good fixtures, attacking wise. I don't mind keeping Mateta. And if you're looking for a budget striker, Joao Pedro is maybe an option for the double in 37, but minutes risk. I'm going to tell you now, minutes risk, don't expect too much in 37 as well against Newcastle or Chelsea, to be honest. Don't expect too much. He does have penalties, but Brighton are just so meh that I just can't be bothered with him. But does have penalties, I will say. The other one I would say would be also, who has double in 37, would be Rasmus Højlund. One player to consider. Has scored now. Does that mean that he'll continue scoring now that he just scored? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. He is a player that I'm thinking of maybe getting in for 37, but not now on the wildcard. I'll probably use one of my free transfers to bring him in instead. But at the moment, I'm not sure if I want to go and get him just yet, even though 2 good fixtures against Burnley and Palace. So it's up to you guys in terms of how you want to approach that, but he's another player to consider. And I guess the final striker I would add would be, for this week at least, is Timo Werner. Now we know what Timo Werner is capable of, which is similar to Darwin and Jackson. But I think Timo Werner in Spurs is a slightly better version than Timo Werner that was at Chelsea. So that we need to consider. He's gotten a few returns, as you can see, 9 against Palace, 5 against Villa, 7 against West Ham, 4 against Forest. So he can get the occasional assist, right? I think he also plays a decent number of minutes in these upcoming doubles. So he is also another Spurs player that if you're looking at this midfield five and you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to get Brennan Johnson in this midfield five. Maybe if you want a team of Werner over Jackson, that is not the worst scenario to be in. I feel like both are like on an equal pedestal at this point between Werner and Jackson. So it's not a bad situation to have a team of Werner as well if you feel like it. I don't think I would go for any other striker. Wissa maybe has the fixtures, I guess single game weaker, you probably want to consider Wissa. But I don't know if you would spend a transfer on a single game weaker. If I was spending a transfer on a single game weaker, it would be Watkins and no one else, to be honest. That's basically it. Alvarez, no. Unless we know Haaland is out as a season-ending injury and he's out, then maybe Alvarez. Otherwise, no. So yeah, that's basically my wildcard options for you. And for those of you who aren't wildcarding as well, hopefully some of those priority picks does help you. Let me know in the comments what your wildcard draft is, and I will rate it or give feedback on it if you want me to. And yeah, make sure if you've reached up to this point, do hit that like button and subscribe as well by looking to try and get towards. It says 174 on screen, but actually we have like more than that. So it's somewhere currently past 700. Next step is to get to 800. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe as well, tell your friends as well. And if you're playing your wildcard, let me know in the comments as well what your draft is. And I'll be streaming a deadline stream 2 hours before the deadline. And I'm potentially looking to do a team selection stream as well. Either after the City game or Friday night Australian time at about 8 p.m. Australian time, which is 11 a.m. in the UK. So let me know if you guys want me to stream after the City game or maybe the other time that I mentioned. Let me know in the comments as well what you think about that, and I will see you all for that stream. Thank you all for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you all later.